Welcome to Wisdom Education Services. Now we are going to discuss about average. Now average is one of the first topics that we are going to learn while preparing for your examination. Now let us see what average really is. Average, as we are taught in high school, is the division of the sum of items and the total number of items. If we have 5 numbers, we'll add all the 5 numbers and divide the sum by 5. That should give us the average. From this expression, we can also find out that number of items is equal to sum of items divided by average. Or I can say that the sum of items is the product of average and number of items. Now these are the 3 expressions which we used to use in our high school. But now let us explore average more. First of all, just to warm you up, I'll give you a couple of questions so that you can understand this expression better. Now use this problem to understand the expression. Now in this problem, there are 10 teachers and they have 80 children to teach. So how many average number of students will each teacher teach? Since there are 80 children which are to be divided among 10 teachers, that would mean that each teacher would be teaching 8 children. Now this was a pretty simple example. You won't be getting such examples in your exams. But this is just to make you understand that expression. Now let us see another simple example. In this example, there are 5 members and the average age of each member is 24 years. Now, since the average age is 24 years and the total number of members are 5, which using the expression that the sum of items is the product of the number of items and the average, the sum of ages of all the family members would be 24 times 5, 120. Now, this was again a simple example. Now coming to the last of the simple examples, in this example $300 are distributed among a group of people and the average money that everyone receives is $25. We have to find out how many people are there in the group. Now if you see this example, $300 are distributed to 25 so that everyone receives $25. So the number of people would be 300 divided by 25. That is 12. If there have been $15 received by each member, the number of people would be 300 divided by 15. That would give the answer as 20. So the expression we have used here is that the number of items is equal to the sum of items divided by average. Now let us explore what average really is. We were going to use the deviation method. This deviation method may sound a bit odd to you in the beginning, but later on it will help you to solve the complex problems very easily. Now what exactly is deviation? The deviation is how far away is the number from the average. Now let me use an example to show this to you. Let me assume a bunch of numbers. Now average would be a number which would lie exactly in the middle of these numbers in terms of magnitude. Which would mean the deviation on the negative side would equal to the deviation on the positive side. Since the negative deviation is equal to positive deviation, adding up all the deviations would give the total deviation to be 0. So this is our first point, which states that the sum of deviations from average is always 0. So let's use this first point to answer a few questions. First of all, let us see how can we use this deviation method to find the average of few numbers. Now first of all, I would like to give you a very simple example. Let us assume there are 4 children and they are having 8 chocolates altogether. Now looking at it, you would say, okay, every child would receive about 2 chocolates on an average. But let us use the deviation method from here. In deviation method, what I do is I assume any number to be the average. Let me assume that each child gets one chocolate on an average. So child 1 will get the first chocolate, child 2 will get the second chocolate, child 3 will get the third chocolate, and child 4 will get the fourth chocolate. Now I can see here I've got a surplus of 4 chocolates. Now this surplus shows that the deviation is not 0. So in order to make the deviation 0, I have to give these chocolates back. So in order to give this chocolate back, I would be redistributing this 4 chocolates to the 4 children. Now each children will again get one chocolate. So now the shared deviation is 1. Earlier I assumed 1 to be the average, and after that I got 1 to be the shared deviation, which means that 2 is the actual average. Now let us assume this concept into actual numbers, into finding the average of actual numbers. Let me assume 3 numbers. The first number to be 100, the second number to be 120, and the third number to be 170. Now the first number is 100. Now please note down the steps as I solve this example. I will assume any number to be the average. Now let me assume 100 to be the average. Since I've assumed 100 to be the average, the deviation of 100 from 100 will be 0. The deviation of 100 from 120 would be positive of 20. The deviation of 100 from 170 would be a positive of 70. Now adding all the deviations, I'm getting a surplus of positive 90, which I have to redistribute back. To redistribute a surplus of positive 90 among the 3 members, positive 30 would go to each of the member. Hence, I can say that the average of these 3 numbers is 130. Now, let us assume some other number to be the average, and we'll check whether we are getting the same answer or not. In the same example, where there are 3 numbers, 100, 120 and 170, I'm assuming 110 to be the average. Now 100 will give you a deviation of negative 10. 120 will give you a deviation of a positive 10. And 170 would give you a deviation of positive 60. Adding up all the deviation, I'm getting a total deviation of positive 60, because 60 plus 10 and minus 10 is plus 60. Now this plus 60 has to be divided among these 3 members, 110, 110 and 110. So sharing the 60 into 3 members, I would be giving 20, 20, 20 to each of the members, which would mean that the average would be 110 plus 20, that is 130. So see, I assumed a different number to be the average, but I still got the same number to be the average, which means this method would say that you assume any number to be the average, the answer would come out to be the same. Now the question is, if I assume 130 to be the average, will it give me a deviation of 0? Yes, it should give you a deviation of 0. Now let us check that. So we have these 3 numbers again, and I'm assuming 130 to be the average. Now 130 gives a deviation of negative 30 from 100. Now 130 gives a deviation of negative 10 from 120. From 170 it would give a deviation of 170 minus 130, that is a positive of 40. Adding up all the deviation, negative 30 and negative 40 will cancel out positive 40, and my total deviation will come out to be 0 again. So which states that if I assume the average to be average, the total deviation is always 0. So this was about the average. Now let me solve a question for you so that you can understand it better. Let's see this example. Now please solve this example side by side with me so that you can understand its insights. Now I have these 3 numbers, 840, 940 and 1040. Now I can assume any number to be the average, and it is not compulsory that these numbers should be from these three numbers. Now let me assume 900 to be the average. So the deviation 840 will give from 900 is 840 minus 900, that is a negative of 60. The deviation that 940 gives from 900 is a positive of 40. The deviation that 1040 gives from 900 is a positive 140. So when I add all the deviations, what I get is positive 140 plus positive 40 minus 60, which is equal to a positive 120. Now since this is the total deviation which has to be shared among three members, sharing it among three members, each member will get positive 120 divided by 3, which is equal to 40. So adding the shared deviation to the number I assumed, the average will come out to be 940. So this is the process. Now let me tell you the steps again. The step would be, first write down all the numbers. The second step would be assume any number to be the average. Let's suppose I assume 900 to be the average in this case. Then calculate the deviations of each number from the average. Now since I have the deviations here, then you add all the deviations and then you divide it by the total number of members. Then you get the shared deviation. Over here, as the cursor shows, it's positive 120 by 3. The shared deviation is then added to the assumed average and we get 940 as the average. Remember, take a note that the shared deviation will always be 0 when you have assumed the actual average to be the average. So this is the end of the first point. Now you can resume to video number 2 for its examples, where we will be showing you how to solve questions using this point. Thank you very much.